Welcome. About to get started here. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 10th collection. It's so wonderful to see all these beautiful faces out there. And it's so exciting to be already at our 10th collection, as I've been calling it, our first two-digit collection. Yeah, I just want to say a quick thank you to everybody here. I want to thank Jason Glover, who's behind the bar, and my co-conspirator here. Yeah, thank you. And of course, big thank you to the Hugo House for housing us here. I think I'd like to just get started right away tonight and bring up our first reader. I got plenty of time to tell you all kinds of things. Johnny Horton led the University of Washington Summer Creative Writing Program in Rome, and he teaches English and creative writing at Seattle Central College. He's published poems in Poetry Northwest, City Arts Magazine, and Los Angeles Review. His chapbook, Sea Legs, drops in September of 2026. Let's give a warm welcome to Johnny Horton.
Thank you, Ariel, and thank everyone also for being here. It's such a nice space. Is it a nice space? I don't know. It is, right? It is. I'm glad it's still here. But I gotta say, I'm old enough that I remember the old Hugo House. And I gotta say, like, I loved the old Hugo House. It was a funeral home that was like turned into like a literary arts center. I'm not saying that that's foreshadowing for the literary arts in America necessarily, but it might be. Speaking of foreshadowing and things that are no longer here, Ariel mentioned City Arts Magazine. I was published in City Arts Magazine, and a few months later, it went defunct. I'm not going to say it's my fault, but I'm going to read this poem out of City Arts Magazine for you all. And it's a poem I wrote, if I can find it, because I wouldn't have written it had I not grown up in the Midwest. Because
Are you sure they published it?
I'm pretty sure. It's in here somewhere. I swear to God. Page 22. Okay, if I can count. All right, I found it. It's called Spirits, okay? And you can take that in the spirit of the funeral home that was the old Hugo House, and let's see if we can maybe, maybe we can raise the spirits of the dead. And it's based on this idea as well. My grandmother, by the way, was a spiritualist. I don't know if you know what that is, but it was a religion that kind of swept America in the late 19th century. Part of the reason maybe was because so many people had died in the Civil War. One of the big people who was into it, and by the way, spiritualists, what do? They do seances to talk with spirits. Mediums are a big part of what they do. My grandmother used to go and visit and have seances at her house. And the big person who really got into it was Abraham Lincoln's widow. Kind of made it into a national movement. She talked to ghosts a lot. Anyway, this poem is based on that. It's because I'm from the Midwest. It's because the main street of my hometown is Lincoln Way. Everything around where I grew up near Chicago, and everything around it, Lincoln Park, is named after Abraham Lincoln. A lot of stuff. Anyhow, so this is called Spirits, and let's try to bring the spirit of Abraham Lincoln back, for Christ's sake. All right. It's kind of a weird poem, I'm sorry. Spirits. The widow Lincoln communed with so many spirits, she had to be committed. To be haunted is to be devoted. To paraphrase the secrets of the dead, you need a medium, a mirror in which you look forward to appearances. Alcohol comes from the Arabic word for makeup. Maybe we have to change our looks if we want communion. We have cocktails because we can't stop mixing. We love entertaining possibilities. What we find intoxicating, we could fall for. What we fall for makes us smart. Look at the German Shepherd barking at his reflection, the robin that sees in your pain a blue sky for flying free. Socrates feared poetry, would make people think their delusions could be true. Wile E. Coyote shared his critical point of view. When he painted the mouth of a tunnel, he thought the roadrunner could not run through. Maybe we are innocent when we fall in love. We lose it when we think we know what's going on. Facades are what we put up with when we feel like hiding. The cover-up is how we live with politicians. The unattractive, honest Abe said he'd wear another face if he had one. The vase our profiles make when we face off must contain our thirst. We have to make out if intoxication's what we want.
Ooh.
All right. I want to show you this because it's a great anthology. It's an anthology of Chicago poetry, City of the Big Shoulders, that I was lucky enough to be published in because I wrote a poem about John Dillinger. And y'all know who John Dillinger is? It was like Public Enemy #1 for a while. Like Johnny Depp played him in a movie, and then kind of became Public Enemy #1 for a while himself. Anyhow, it was published in this, which it was like one of the, I don't know, when you're from someplace and then that place recognizes you, it's just a really cool feeling. It's a really, really good feeling. So this is called Dear John Dillinger. Oh, quick question. Does everybody know what a catafalque is?
No.
Oh, it's the platform that you put a coffin on in a funeral home. Sorry, that's the running theme. The old funeral home out here. Okay, so Dear John Dillinger. Do you guys know about John Dillinger?
Yeah.
Like that he had plastic surgery. He had his fingerprints burned off with acid and all sorts of stuff so that he could be in hiding. Did you know all that stuff? Anyway, and James Cagney and like Humphrey Bogart played characters based on him in movies. Pretty cool stuff. Anyway, Dear John Dillinger. We could rearrange our faces, shave our fingerprints, leave our legends carved across the walls that we escaped from. We still wouldn't find ourselves motor mouthing across the silver screen, translated by Warner or MGM. I'm impressed, not by chilly nights you spent in barns, regretting all the hearts you'd broken, the one farm you'd never return to, the fallow fields, clover turning blushing cheeks to sunrise, but by the vanishing act, how you disappeared in the North Woods, just to turn up in Arizona as an alias, a carnival mask, bullets for teeth, and already gone. If everyone believes you're someone else, maybe you are Humphrey Bogart. Maybe you're James Cagney, born shouting insults at the cops. Dear John, I'd rather not think the flashbulbs powder pop exposed to the concrete as your catafalque. I'd rather believe you burned those mortgages in the banks, paid off so many failing farms, you became the myth. Things might be easier then. I could pack my bags, believe around the corner was a place, a station where I could be another face. And so my birthday's coming up. Yeah, you can find the registry on Facebook. It's January 22nd. Look, this is the list of people that I share my birthday with. The actress who was in The Exorcist. Is it Linda Gray? Is that her
Linda
name?
Blair.
Linda Blair. Yeah, Linda Blair, like spinning her head all around, was one. Like every single one, by the way, there's something awful that happened with them. Another is Sam Cooke. Y'all know Sam Cooke, who was murdered down in LA. Another was D.W. Griffith. Y'all know D.W. Griffith? Like, yeah, he was a filmmaker. Like, look, I mean, like without D.W. Griffith, there's like so many different kinds of like camera angles and other like shots and films that we wouldn't have. Also kind of a racist, right? Like, not necessarily a good person. Made, The Birth of a Nation, which many of you probably seen. But also Lord Byron shares my birthday. And I love Lord Byron for a lot of reasons. I mean, like he actually kind of put the "by" in Byron, for one. But there's a lot of other reasons as well. This poem is called Vampires. And Lord Byron was actually, I don't know if you know this, but like Lord Byron was the model for the first novel about a vampire. And Bram Stoker like read that novel and then wrote Dracula later. So in some ways, Lord Byron was the model for Count Dracula, which is sort of interesting. And he kind of had a sort of a vampiric way about him. I think he like extracted the souls out of people and kind of left them a hollow shell afterwards. Like one of his lovers said that he was mad, bad, and dangerous to know. And he also he had to leave England because the things he liked to do tended to be illegal in the days of King George III, who was the king at the time. But he also idolized the United States, and he thought that the United States was like the great hope of the world, and others as well. Anyway, he also wrote a poem about a vampire, and the epigraph comes from that. And this is from Lord Byron, and he says this: "Thy victims, ere they yet expire, shall know the demon for their sire." And so this is called Vampires. Maybe we were, oh, by the way, it's sort of set out in Forks at the beginning. That's what triggered it all. So maybe we were sired by the lumber mill, brought up to suck life from oyster shells, to cross-cut cedar trees and count the rings. Imagine the scene from 300 years before Washington crossed the Delaware. So many people have died since then. We must believe that some still walk. Take my recent ex, who couldn't get off until I wore a turtleneck. Take my hometown developers, who imagined the Hellenistic confines of the Carnegie Library reborn as a parking lot. I remember watching Frankenstein in the Art Deco theater whenever I visit the ATM where it used to stand. What's invisible needs us to live. Lord Byron dared his friends to write, knowing deadlines brought creatures to life. What if George Washington had been raised by wolves? What if we must be open to change? Chickens have eyes that regenerate their lenses once you remove their lenses. The most immortal jellyfish tastes like saffron if it's braised in saffron. Maybe we have poor taste because being offensive is the best defense. Maybe Lord Byron figured vampires as fathers because he found his father draining. Washington cured the common cold with leeches. Egyptians fought infection with maggots. The survivors of Lord Byron preserved his corpse in rum, so we can say the spirit saved his heart. Okay, I think I'm gonna stop there if that's okay. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate this whole thing, and thank you, Ari.
Thank you, Johnny, for getting things kicked off for us. Very much appreciated. Really cool stuff. Johnny's about 8 inches taller than me. There we go. So you may have noticed that there are some collections cards around if you're at a table. If you're not at a table, there are some in the back as well as at the front desk and at the bar. There's also the QR code from the back of your card is also right here on the screen. And if you follow that QR code, you'll get to the collections webpage, where you can find links to some of the writers' websites tonight. You can find archives to past collections if you're interested in that as well. We are, in fact, live streaming from over there and archiving right over here. So, yeah, we've got a lot of things going on, and it's really exciting. But we call ourselves a public club, and that's because we kind of want to take a new approach in a way to how writers present and how they gather. And my philosophy personally is that there's lots of sort of inner circles and rejection slips that come in the writing world, and that's not really what I set out to do when Jason and I put this whole thing together. So if you're out there and you're interested in being up here, do use that QR code, and you can contact me through there. Let me know that you were here. Let me know that you're interested, and we'll hopefully find some room for you. Yeah, great. So with that said, I do want to bring up our next writer. This is going to be Caitlin Andrews. Caitlin M. Andrews, she, they, is from Phoenix, Maryland, and holds an MFA in creative writing from the University of Miami. Her writing has placed in Electric Literature, Short Edition, New Square, and the Waterproof Anthology, the New Limestone Review, and elsewhere. Fireweed in the Veil, her novel in progress, is a braided, queer historical adventure set during the Irish War for Independence. It was selected as a finalist for the Marianne Rousseau Award and a Fulbright Scholarship in Research. Caitlin has received multiple fellowships from Grub Street and the Chesapeake Writers Conference. When not writing, they facilitate literary events at Hugo House and work in higher ed administration. See them fangirling about hiking, Lord of the Rings, and Twilight memes and the Irish language on IG, I believe that's Instagram, at Edgar Allenbro _. Please welcome Caitlin Andrews.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Ariel, for that lovely introduction. Forgot about the IG part in there. Thank you so much for curating this event, and to Jason, who's out there slinging drinks, not only this night, but many other nights at Hugo House, and of course to Nat for helping us facilitate this event. Yeah, I'm currently querying this novel, so it's a very exciting time to be able to share it with you all. As Ariel mentioned, it's a queer historical adventure set during the Irish War for Independence. And Darcy, the main character, is passing as a man. He originally was born a woman and was living in the countryside as Bree, but she comes into some trouble with the law and decides to pass to join up with the rebellion. And the novel kind of interrogates queerness as being revolutionary, and also kind of how this, what was once a disguise, kind of becomes a new identity in itself that is, you know, with the vocabulary of the time, kind of this character negotiating queerness and gender identity things. So I have an excerpt here from the latter half of the novel. Darcy, a couple things to know. Darcy is living with fellow rebel and secret lover, Vinny. And they are boarding with Vinny's mother, drama, cue that. Her name is Mrs. Byrne. And notably in this passage, we have another peer, Kara, she features here. And we have the mentioning of Vinny's deceased brother, Theo. In the scene just before this, Darcy and Vinny have just buried a comrade, and it is Christmas night. Mrs. Byrne puts on an elaborate Christmas dinner fare for her two boys, the one she gave birth to and the one that won't go away. The latter's been consistent on his rent payments, and he's relatively clean and mostly quiet. She supposes she ought to be grateful. She fusses with the tableware, straightening the runner, and stokes the fire, doing all the things her staff used to do, trying to silence the nagging feeling in her chest. Mostly quiet. What had she heard the other night past the witching hour? She's adjusting two ceremonial chairs, one for Theo and the other for her dear foolish husband when the boys come in. They smell of alcohol, but she says nothing of it. It's a holiday after all. They work diligently through several courses while the gramophone plays Christmas songs. When Kara arrives for dessert, she isn't doing as she should. Of course, she's brought presents for each of them. She's always considerate like that. But she's not standing under the mistletoe that Mrs. Byrne carefully hung in the foyer. She's not rouged her cheeks or changed from that droll blue dress that she wears so often she might as well sleep in it too. As the three huddle over plates of plum pudding and shared hushed voices, something about the newspaper, Mrs. Byrne faces the fireplace, biting a nail. Foolish, stubborn girl. She'll never secure a proposal from Vinny at this rate. All right, the lot of you, Mrs. Byrne turns, clapping her hands. Up, up, time for mass. They walk together, a small cluster of defiance in the cold. Her son looks different somehow in the low light. She wants to call him back to her, but some small part of her has resigned that he's already gone to a distant shore where he speaks a new language that she cannot comprehend. Though it's 10:30, there's a queue forming at the entrance to St. Andrew's, despite serving parishioners every half hour for the next 24 hours. Darcy hasn't been to a proper mass in months and is grateful to delay what may be a confrontation with a less than pleased God. I have connections with another newspaper. It's Kara. She's in Vinny's ear. Tell me what you lads need and we can print it for you. Spread the word. Clearly you cannot rely on the Independent. I know it was you who smashed the machines. They hang back from the crowd, heads bent together. Darcy is loath to admit it, but they do make a charming, if not unconventional pair. Kara, taller, graceful, forward, and Vinny, alert, gallant, sparkling with self-assurance. Although, as of late, not so much in the latter. Despite their efforts to spend as much time together as secrecy allows, Darcy can feel an invisible wall forming around Vinny. Whatever he's doing to keep the blood dreams at bay, it's forcing him to remove from the world as well. If we're being accurate, Darcy smashed them, Vinny chirps. Darcy half smiles into his scarf. Kara looks neither impressed nor pleased by the glance these two men share. At least he had the presence of mind to hide his face. What were you thinking? I didn't ask for a lecture from you, Vinny says. You had to do what needed doing. Well, it's pretty obvious to me you lads need help, Kara counters. And what could you possibly do? We need someone who can keep up. Vinny looks pointedly at her feet. Stunned, Kara falls silent. Her cheeks flare red. Footnote, Kara had polio as a child and she has a hard time walking. So this was very rude. What the hell, Vinny? Darcy admonishes. He's got half a mind to shove him. A few nearby heads turn at the swearing. Mrs. Byrne gathers Kara towards the women's side of the church. The organ strikes a deep, resounding note. Soon will come the proclamation of their Savior's birth. Every year, the churches herald Christ our Lord, and every year the Lord watches the evictions and the Catholics being moved from their land, and the policy prohibiting them to vote, and the hunger, so much hunger. He watches while the old gods wither, as he plants foreign seeds in their worshippers' mouths. Laudetur Jesus Christus. Vinny and Darcy collect on the men's side of the church under the yawning arched ceilings. Vinny makes the sign of the cross and drops to his knees, eyes shut. A rosary swings from his interlocked fingers. Vinny's, I'm so sorry. Like, keep it together, girl. Vinny's faith is like a brick, and Darcy's afraid it might smash him to pieces. While the priest calls them to stand, Darcy watches Vinny, hoping that holding his friend together in his gaze will be enough. The holidays and New Year have smeared into a blurry gray January. Scene change, next chapter. The only noteworthy evening has been Noleg Naban, where Mrs. Byrne propped up her feet and watched the boys scrub her house until the floors gleamed. Just a few days later, the news arrived, officially a Sinn Féin fundraiser, a chance to bring Dublin's wealthy allies into one room for the cause. Darcy peruses the Byrne family bookshelf while Vinny finishes dressing. Upstairs, the patter of feet tumble this way and that as Vinny and his mom search for a missing cufflink. Rain taps against the living room as Yeats, Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Pierce, and Ash gather for a consortium on the bookshelf. Darcy wouldn't call himself a Shawnee. The mantle of keeper of stories feels too great, but he's always collecting stories. It seems Vinny's father was no different. He plucks a book from the shelf, fluttering the pages under his thumb. But what of the stories that never make it into bound leather and ink? He thinks of his journal upstairs, scribbled and crossed out and rewritten. He thinks of the folk tales of his mother, never written down at all, of old world remedies that come from cautionary tales, of lakes that are also women, of women who are seals, of maidens who are hags, of transformation. He looks to this shelf and is met with the quiet monolith of masculinity that now also rules his life. To be apart, but apart, and never belonging anywhere. You don't strike me as the studious type. Darcy turns. Kara's in a dress of fashionable sequins and rosy pink mesh. Her curls are wrestled into place with matching sequin flowers. She's smiling, her beauty a gentle adornment that she dons at times of her choosing. Darcy is momentarily rendered speechless. He snaps the book shut, returns it to the shelf. People underestimate me all the time. I'm sure you know the feeling. Kara brings up one shoulder, then drops it. It actually comes quite in handy. You slip through the shadows until you decide to be seen. Standing there together, Darcy feels a surge of understanding rise between them. She's also led a double life, sneaking out from her home to write Revolution for the Citizen. After the raid on the Independent, she'd come to share her stories with the boys and talk politics over the fire. And after all this time, she kept his secret. She's not brought it up once or changed how she treats him. Darcy thinks Kara would make one hell of a volunteer. You ready for this? She asks. Darcy tugs at the collar of a too large but well-kept corded navy suit and chaps. Mrs. Byrne had insisted he wear her dead son's clothes. Can't say I am. Kara straightens his bow tie, perhaps ignoring how he stiffens at the touch. Her wrists smell of gardenia. Where's the man of the hour? Likely preening his pomade to perfection, or his mother's caught him in a lecture about how to show a woman a good time. Darcy's only half joking. Well, she has been wondering what's taking so long. Kara's looking at him rather pointedly. A sick feeling stirs in Darcy's stomach. About what? She drops her hands. The engagement. The fervor of the holidays has a way of accentuating these tensions, and Mrs. Byrne's intentions of making a match for her son are now nothing short of an open secret. Vinny's indecision comes in tremors when he's tangled in Darcy's arms. Marriage would release him from the speculations of why a handsome fellow would reject several prospects to remain on his own. People might think him odd. They might suspect him of something. Kara steps closer, fingering a brooch that clasps the shawl to her shoulders. Is there another woman? Her blue eyes are dark and serious. The question spouts spread on the bottom of Darcy's feet. His regard for her cools. They both want him, and neither is willing to share. I've only ever wanted men, Vinny had confessed in wet whispers onto Darcy's throat. His voice was haunted, so much it feels like Vinny has said these things to the wall by his cot night after night. Now it's just you. It's only you. All Darcy can do is hold him tighter in those moments. The flooding warmth of Vinny's acceptance clashes directly with the agony Darcy seems to be inflicting on his friend. He tugs on his cap, hoping to hide the blush rising on his neck. Words clot in his throat like marbles. There isn't, not another woman. And that's it, thank you. Thanks, everybody, and remember to get drinks from the house. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Caitlin.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. So we do, yeah, I know a lot about that stuff. So yeah, thank you so much, Caitlin. I mentioned earlier that we call ourselves a public club, but more publicly, we call ourselves a live magazine. And the reason we call ourselves a live magazine is because this room is called the Hugo House Salon. So we couldn't call ourselves a salon because that would have been awkward. So we chose a live magazine, and that made us think, well, what is a live magazine? And what we realized is that a magazine is a variety of things. So we decided that variety was going to be our ongoing theme. And in that way, we try to bring a lot of different types of writing and make sure that we're showcasing all kinds of writing, anywhere from poetry or fiction like we just saw. We also like to highlight nonfiction and drama as well. And on top of that, we like to bring in people that are not here. And what I mean by that is we have a couple of video performances tonight. The first one is going to be from a friend of mine who's in Brooklyn. And Eliel Lucero is a native New York poet and DJ. And their work appears in Before Passing, Great Weather for Media, and Best Short Fiction 2016, among other journals and compilations. Eliel, aka El Maderas, has DJ'd for 30 years with a focus on global dance music on vinyl. They serve as development manager for Flushing Town Hall, and they write a free music blog called Sunday Morning Records, which you can find on Substack. And now, please welcome Eliel Lucero.
Hi everyone, my name is Eliel Lucero. Coming from Brooklyn, New York. Well, I'm not coming, I'm still here, but you guys are far away. Well, I'm far away. Whatever, it works. Thanks Ariel for inviting me again. Unlike previous videos, this one was not put together by professionals who are the great people that I work with at Flushing Town Hall. I'd like to thank them. Becca, Lissy Gold, they're all great. But I got this camera and I've been playing with it. Now I'm gonna try to do it myself. Let's see how it works. This is in fact my fourth take. Let's see if this is the one that sticks. I'm not Scorsese over here, you know, so this might just be the one that you get no matter how it comes out. Anyway, I'm happy to share a poem with you today that I wrote at a workshop with Angel Nafis and or Shira Ehrlichman. See, I took a 7-week with Angel and a 7-week with Shira. And this poem was written in the week where I ended with Angel and began with Shira like a day apart. So I don't know which one it came from, but they're both wonderful poets. They're a married couple as well. So, you know, lucky me. Not lucky you, maybe. Anyway, this is Tiberius Rex. You named him Tiberius after a captain you would happily follow into the stars. I added Rex because I enjoy wordplay, and I knew this puppy would inevitably rule our household. How were we to know he would make his noble name his entire personality? Our headstrong, impulsive pup grew into the dog king of Crook Avenue, and so he likes to think himself. Your Bernie was once our king. He yapped us to bed. When he was ready, he demanded treat after treat, beckoned us to lift his tiny body if he was tired or just wanted to be held. Chance, our second, was a meek pup who let Burn Dog bully him into submission. The night old man Burns curled up on the rug where you sat and let out his final breath, a fault line tore our home into despair. been his person his entire life. And I was happy for 6 years of feeding, walking, carrying, and loving little Bernadette. That night, when I held his body and felt no life, I understood our lives had been emptied. Our sweet little chance slunk so low, not knowing how to be a dog anymore. And then came Tiberius Rex, this impetuous little schnoodle who weren't sure how to love, yet he won us over with his little tantrums and cuddles and became your baby and my baby. And he's almost 4, love, but still barks us to attention whenever it suits his whims. He walks ahead, pulling us to this tree or that pole or hydrant or bush or trash or wherever he sees fit to. And while he never met Burns, he sure did get his spirit and runs us accordingly. If a dog barks outside, he runs to our 5th floor window, ready to hear the pleas of his subjects. He simply can't believe why we're about to leave the house without him. He can't fathom why we would hug one another without him. He is unable to comprehend why we would use the bathroom without him. So he sits outside, pawing at the door, standing like a sentry to a post, our jealous little tyrant, unyielding and mad with power. But when he's ready to cuddle, love, he becomes the softest plush doggy. He fits everywhere, creates space between us, and crams his body awkwardly in any fold he finds, no matter the size. He's a very good boy, our Tiberius Rex. The way he wraps his splayed body around the chair, and I'm wrestling with a poem to go this way, but it takes me that way. Just like him, who he finds an inch of thigh to rest his head upon when I'm typing on the couch, wrestling with melancholy, or when the 4 tops play and your eyes swell with Bernadette, and he won't stop jumping on you until you lift him and he fills you up. And just like with our grief and these poems I want to write, our furry ruler pulls us into him and each other, and now even our chance is getting brave, just like us. Thanks, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you, Eliel. I met Eliel so randomly one night when I was in New York myself through a friend who I actually met when I was in New York many years before that, who's from Detroit. He brought us, my friend Andy brought us to this poetry club because he knew that that's what we were into. And there was Eliel bartending, and it was just the most fortuitous little moment. And, we've been in contact ever since, and it's so cool to know him. And I'm so glad that he could bring that poem to us today. We do have another poet up now. This is going to be Al Ra. Born in New York City and raised in Los Angeles, he ice skated at Rockefeller Center, witnessed the counterculture, and read Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth in the early 1960s. In 1966, his parents took him across the US via Route 66 and up Highway 1 to Carmel and Haight-Ashbury. He holds an MA in mathematics in San Francisco State University, from San Francisco State University, and has been teaching math since 2004 at community colleges in California and Washington. He first started writing poetry at about 8 years of age and has continued to do so since then. Please welcome Al Roth.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So I like to just launch into the poems. I could give you a lot of detail and stuff, and maybe I'll give you a tiny bit, but for the most part, I'm just going to read to you. So the first one is called Close Meets Far Away. So each day, walking to the market from my room, giants watch me slowly ramble by with no judgments, just head and sky. And with me is just an afterthought. So it's amazing how good it feels seeing the mountains after the storm covered in snow. And it's even more amazing considering how miserable it would be to be there freezing. Venus, too, is beautiful from a distance. I turn the corner as I head down to the market, and I face the I-90 from a slight elevation across the freeway. The angel Moroni atop the Mormon temple with his golden horn proclaims the gospel according to the golden plates that a man named Smith discovered in New York, a place I love to visit but would never want to live in again. From this distance, the I-90 feels hopeful, a way to escape the confines of my room and start fresh. East to the Cascades, west to the Olympics, and nowhere in between. On a clear New York fall morning, my father held my hand, and we rode the subway to downtown where he worked. I spent the day watching him breathing the musk of books and boxes in an old office with a big window that looked out from the 23rd floor at the lines of buildings moving in parallax against the blue sky and long shadows clipping the streets. Where all those things I've read about in poems, novels, and memoirs happened, the tiny people down there fit neatly into the crosswalks, bus stops, and storefronts. A busy diorama destined for the attic to be revisited when there's no more room for memories in the living room. My breath fogged the window and I wiped it to keep watching the coursing crowd. I couldn't see their faces well enough to know what they might be feeling, and my father painted a smile or a frown here and there whenever I asked a difficult question. And I kept And I listened to his response, and I questioned, and I listened, and I questioned, and I listened and questioned. And 58 years later, he was still explaining as I held his hand to help him cross the street. The sun is beautiful when it's clear, and the moon reflects the sun. We weren't made to be there, only to appreciate it from a distance. I need to hold this a little closer so I can see what I'm doing. The next one is just affirmation, something I picked up, something that just evolved from my love of the North Coast, California and Oregon and Washington and so forth. Breathe me, ancient corridor of redwood beach, long and untiring. I'm your song, a melody beyond fear, whose verse and refrain entwine with the wind and blithely cast lies to the ocean from the pools at the monolith's feet where the starfish cling. And from the coarse, moist sand to the gulls above the hillside, flecked with flowers, their conversation with the waves say plainly what is scribed onto the sandstone cliffs to an audience of crows perched on the branches of the moss-laden spruce, awaiting the next act of nature while the grass quivers behind me. Behind me are the meandering footprints that the tide will eventually claim. I am here, head flung back, slowly spinning the sky to see which move I make next in a game where the whales breach and the conch shell whispers the uncountable rules. The blackberry brambles on the banks lure me into the ripest of the bunch. No thorn is sharp enough to stop my reaching. No sour taste spoils my love of the sugary blood, and I'm more annoying to the flies than they are to me. As I forage, I'm waved back to reckon with the trough from such sweetness, forced to reconcile there with my drunken face, blaming the universe for my brutal nature. Slowly a sense of that reckoning and a blood seeping from a forgotten wound dispassionately watches rage dance about in some confused agony. Its distorted image from just below the watery surface silently mouths Shakespeare's quality of mercy under the background light of our galaxy, while in the cluster of Pleiades, Merope hides her shame of marrying a mortal. Once past the point of no return, beneath the shade of the giant hogweed, I blister and burn foolishly, hold my head in my hands, unable to wrap my mind around those things that my opposable thumb can grasp. A wave crashes and rushes up to me, washing my feet, slowly shushing and leaving the tiny sand crabs to scurry back home. There is shadow because there is light, and the stone of misery is worn away by the current of compassion. So at midday and midnight, in the razor glare or below the heavy gray, with drizzle or wind or smoke or snow, I stand guard, wearily but steadfast, a grounding wire to send the spark back to safety. Here in the ultra deep field, if you feel alone, you are mistaken. If you're not alone, I wore the wrong glasses. I wore my distance glass, and that's why I'm laughing. So to start briefly over here, if you feel alone, you're mistaken. If you're mistaken, you're not alone. If you're cold, gather around our star and warm yourself on a spit of sand by the mouth of the river where the naked planet sits in the light of that star. Its salty contours surfing the gravity waves while its precious moon engages the tides, unencumbered by buildings and streets and gargoyles. Looking outward, the sky swoops down to touch the sea. In its meeting, it brings to order the unordered sense of being that starts and ends on a butterfly's wings, coded by the singularity, expressed on the dark brow of a cloud, brilliant and subtle, whose purpose is to wonder and wander and fold into the sandy blanket against her precious skin. Three bodies, of which I'm one, hold each other's hands and dance around the children who, without thinking, crash into the chaotic circle of the starlight and sit on the ground looking at us, startled and bewildered, beginning to cry. We sweep them up and wait for them to know the silence of the now, here, and later, and thereafter. We tell them, we have given birth to you who have named us. Then below the big, brilliant castles of clouds and meandering vaporous veil, I draw my breath and empty it into another crashing wave, entering the ocean, undulating, rolling side to side, still for a moment, then surging, slapping, pushing, pulling, tumbling, dropping, gasping, touching ground, slowly emerging, walking, sitting, sniffing, looking, listening. I'm glad I can even read this. I was like, what is wrong with my vision? Well, I kind of know what's wrong. The next one's called Inhabiting Myself. This one is kind of sparked by all the warfare and stuff, the horrible shit we're reading about these days. Before I could take cover, sudden awareness exploded over my oatmeal and coffee, collapsing the walls that shaped my home, and now rest on me. Each concrete chunk forcing me to dig my way through the thick, dusty debris, pushing and pulling and squeezing to fit through the precarious crevices that crumble further with each move I make. I will die, searching for the next breathable moment, looking behind each fallen facade for something to use to keep me sheltered. But here I find those things that I cannot fix or reconcile. My body is torn and I've lost a shoe while freeing myself, and I can't seem to tell where I am as I limp around through these pieces. Though these pieces are all there, compressed into the moment, there is no memory, only dead reckoning and deja vu. Here I am. Yes, here I am. And the lies slithered away into the dust. And last one. So this last one, very briefly, was formed by a friend of mine who sent a video, and it just had him looking down. All you could see is his feet marching in gravel. He was bummed out about some heavy duty stuff. His wife was sick and all that. And to hear it, really, I was going to bring a drum just to sort of hear how it's the beat. Rage marches with a steady gait to battle, crunching earth beneath its boots, not feeling the blisters or sensing blood. If the ground were to disappear, it would violently insist it was there, falling as it confused up with down, the enemy for its own, beating its chest to scare away reason, avoiding the poison of butterflies and trees. It keeps to the gravelly road under the gunmetal sky.
Wow, thank you, Al. It's so cool just to have such a cool variety, and Al comes up here and gives us that. So great. Thank you so much, Al. I am gonna finish off this first half of the show now with a little bit of prose of my own. And so if you will now, please welcome Ariel Basom. This short story is called Dandelion Scars, and it takes place in somewhere you might have been called West Seattle. She smelled like cinnamon. Even on the beach, or whatever it was Alki should be called, with the stench of Puget Sound infiltrating, it was all cinnamon. Though he liked to fool himself into thinking it was pheromones, she had cinnamon blood, cinnamon sweat, cinnamon hair follicles. It was her big red habit. She told him one day, sitting on the rocks on that West Seattle shoreline, that she used to run with the skinheads. It was so far from his experience that all he could do was blink and then nod and then blink again. He asked, "What was that like?" One time she said, "I was thrown down an elevator shaft." Jerry could hardly imagine that. Where was the elevator when that happened? How did whoever did this open the doors? Were they in a building that was under construction? He didn't ask her any of these things. He said, "Wow." He tried to relate as he looked down at her black boots, but the worst he could imagine was the time when some boys kicked sand on him. One time, he said, some boys kicked some sand on me. I was in the hospital for a week, she said. She lifted her skirt and showed him the scar. It stretched from her knee to her hip. He wanted to touch it, but it wouldn't be until that summer when she finally made her move. That spring out on Alki, they were just friends. But Jerry wanted more. He wanted to ask, don't you want more? But Lane would have said no. She had enough to deal with. Why did they push you? I was up in their faces. She looked out at the faraway skyline and she got up and walked. Are you coming? Jerry followed. She asked, why do you walk behind me? I don't know, he said. He picked up his pace and walked next to her. He wanted to hold her hand, to feel her calluses against his palm, to scratch his smooth fingers against the broken lines of her scarred life. A few months later, they were together in Lincoln Park, hiking from the ferry line to the water. At the top of a hill, she turned around and waited for him to catch up. He was out of breath and doubled over when he reached her. She said, you like me. She leaned against a tree, put his hand on her stomach, and pulled him to her. Cinnamon explosions erupted all over. Their bodies met and locked. Her pelvic bone snapped into the opening of his groin. Their ribs laced. Her spicy breath made his head spin. Her hands tangled in his curls. They slipped down the side of the trunk and destroyed each other. Moss and mud collected them. Twigs were like springs, roots were pillows. Birds stopped their songs. All that existed was the two of them, deciding love in the damp afternoon. That fall, Jerry was depressed. The leaves turned brown and he darkened with the sky. He had everything he ever wanted. He had her. It had been only 2 months since Lincoln Park, and she had already lost interest. They sat in her car. She'd been yelling at him about his fingernail biting. She called him disgusting, a child, a worthless obligation. I can't be the one to save you, she said. It was the last time he saw her. Remember when you told me about the elevator? What about it? Was that the worst thing that ever happened to you? Not even close. He got out of the car and walked down California Avenue, his hands in his pockets. He hung his head past the junction, the smoothie place, the theater, the gas station. He was broken, unable to understand why she didn't want him when all he could do was love her. She drove behind him for a block until she was done with him forever and took a quick right turn to tear out of there. The sound of screeching tires bounced around on his bones, but then his silence became so deep that the squeals reverberated until they were screams in his head. I just want to be with you. West Seattle was a country of its own, a peninsula on the Salish Sea. It took a bridge to get there and a boat to leave. It was attached to the mainland, but Jerry never went that way, so to him it might as well have been an island. A week had passed since the junction. He wore the same clothes. He drove around West Seattle trying to understand it. He went to their tree in Lincoln Park. He walked along Alki, pretending to hold her hand. He spoke to her. He asked her to tell him more about what it was like to be a skinhead. That night, coming over the crest of the West Seattle Bridge around the bend, heading back to town, Jerry saw the most beautiful angle of the Seattle skyline in a new way. The shipping yards of Harbor Island, the stadiums, the highway cutting off the hills from the skyscrapers, everything was lit up like a giant goodbye. Maybe it was Jerry's tears. Maybe he was numb. Maybe West Seattle was the scar down her leg, drawing a map of Delridge down her thigh. Maybe he wasn't worth a damn. He gripped the steering wheel, and it took all of his might to stay in his lane. All he wanted was to veer over the guardrail and terminate the dull and growing ache in his chest. If only the lump in his throat could carry him off the road. 3 years later, Jerry went to Vashon. He wanted to see where he grew up. He'd avoided West Seattle all that time out of fear he would remember her. He didn't want to want her. He drove past her old apartment, down Fauntleroy, past Lincoln Park, to the ferry dock. "You smell like chamomile," he remembered her saying. "You smell like a dandelion." He liked it when she bit him, sometimes on the lip, sometimes on the back. He liked it when she poured hot wax on his skin and then rubbed it with ice. He liked it when she let him press up close to her in the middle of the night. He liked it when she told him what to do, who to be, and the right way to do things. He remembered when she taught him the proper way to flip an egg, the correct way to fold a towel, and the perfect way she brushed her hair. Waiting for the ferry, he looked out of the parking lot. Her face, damaged in all the right ways, bent nose, curled lip, squinting eyes, was all he could think of. It had been 3 years, and all he wanted was to run his finger along her elevator scar. He wanted to sit with her on the beach and trace her leg like he was tracing her name in the sand. He wanted to ask her, "Why don't we do more things like this? We spent so much time hurting. We never had time for the nice things." "You can't save me," she said. "You can't even save yourself." They loaded the ferry. Jerry wanted to get out of his car and dive off the boat and into the Sound with all his clothes on. He wanted to drown until she jumped in after him. He wanted her to find him and breathe new life into him. On Vashon later that day, he walked along KVI Beach. He remembered the boys kicking sand on him, while his brothers did nothing to stop it. He remembered his dad being nowhere, but somewhere. He walked along the beach and huffed that sweet kelp air. This was what living was about, the musky smell of the sea, overgrown blackberries, and bluffs forever. The KVI tower buzzed its radio waves silently overhead. The big white house on the hill looked back at Jerry. The big white house stood still, haunted by his dad. Why had Jerry come here? He took out a cigarette and it smelled like Dad. He tossed a rock in the water. "I miss you," he said. With the word miss, the rock hit the water with a muted plop. When he said you, he was thinking of her. He was always thinking of her. He took out a piece of Big Red and folded it into his mouth. He kicked the sand. He thought he'd be sick. A man on a horse trotted by and disappeared around the bend. A seagull cried. Later that night on the ferry, he bought a cinnamon roll. He huffed it as he ate it. In the bathroom, he washed his face, but not before he smelled it one last time. The ferry unloaded into West Seattle, and he drove along Fauntleroy. He went past her apartment again. "Do you still live there?" he asked. A piece of his chest crumbled. He thought he was dying. Crossing the bridge back into Seattle, that view, he sighed. "You were the worst thing that ever happened to me," he said. He hit the gas pedal and weaved through the traffic, heading down the steep decline. Somebody honked and he laughed. The headlights blurred on the road. Thank you all so much for that. And thank you to the readers that have read so far. It's been such a great evening so far. We are going to take a little break right now. It's going to be about 10 minutes. Refill your drink, say hi to Jason. The restrooms are back there. Outside is right behind you. And hope to see you back here. Don't go far. We have a bunch of great readers coming up, as well as one more video performer. So we'll see you real soon.
So, Yeah, I'm just gonna see if I can get more water for the tea.
And I didn't learn much on music. So just it just gets. Tell me why. People are different. I don't, not as sophisticated. Of course you don't. Yeah, that's just how you felt about it. So John's sister Oh, another rower. Oh, okay. Yeah. I love to see you read it very well with great love and passion. Yeah. Yeah. But what did you like? Well, what is more important in life than love is what I say. You know what I love is Alan. What it is. It's such a darling, vulnerable, guilty face. I've got the whole that first guy's poem.
I like
They were good. I like it. I know they're the kind of poem that I need
sometimes when they're
Well, yeah, I am definitely a student learner. I do better. Oh, well. It's a different dimension. You know, I get a phone every morning. Oftentimes, besides plates, somebody. So how do you know? My sister, that's the explanation after stories.
I like Harry Potter.
So they're all. I'm usually I like that. I don't like it, but
Oh my god. That's live, and I just walked in front of the camera.
no, I have no idea. Yeah. Hello? Half your family's here.
Yes, they are.
You're on next. Oh, boy, oh,
We're
boy.
traded with Ann. Right there.
What have you liked so far?
I have a hard time concentrating.
Oh, sure.
Anyway, that's good. 'Cause
I'm excited. Are you nervous? Scary? You know when you're up. Snacks. Oh, next. So I'm gonna tell him because did you hear that Nick was gonna leave, but it was gonna be very long.
I told him.
Okay, well, I told him. Okay, good.
I think it's good. I think it's good. That right there is great.
And should we see if they wanna come up here or? It's up to you.
I think it's probably better.
You can hear it better. I think back there, it's probably pretty remote.
Could be.
Yeah, we did. But you guys sent a Christmas card. We did. That was so kind and lovely of you.
We're happy.
So you went, yes, you traveled to the south. We did. We spoke about it next party. Yes, it's not very good. It's very interesting. What you like best? Like that? Yeah, hard to say. What did you like?
There were really a lot of things that I like shot real good. That's what my dad's favorite was it Braves of the old that was fun.
That's big. We found the graves of the ancestors. That was really fun. That's so good. Yeah. We like to sit down and
I'm a little nervous.
I don't think I'll ever go to Alabama. But you did, go to Hungary. Okay. And then
Reading my secret.
lots of that's a big truck. Wow, 3,000. Wow. Yeah. And you drove the whole way? This was a but yeah, just New Orleans. Just only love. I go back to New Orleans. I've always wanted. That's a place I've always wanted. Never been. Have you been? Yes, I went up the whole east coast of went to Alert Bay finally.
We say alert bay. Alert bay.
Okay. Conway. I got it. I'm gonna do it right from now on. And then I go to French language office at Southeast North. Yeah, I love it. 28, 29, 30 September, I'll be at the French language. Join me in September next year. I go for Ollie. I go for the aspirants, I go for the birds, I go for the Valentine's dinner, I go for the people that I meet. Yes, I love the people that I'm in the hotel right now, Carmen and Gary. There's the two, yeah. We stay together. I don't need that, right? We've got enough news every day. I passed through, I stopped and they were very nice with the vibe.
I really like how
You don't have to wear a mask, you don't have to be vaccinated. Well, it's very fun. We're gonna have to go, I'm gonna go back to that. Yeah. Come and join me, that'd be so fun. I would love that. We have another possible family reunion in September. But that doesn't-
All right, my friends, that was about 10 minutes.
Let me get through.
I am ready just as soon as everybody else is. I don't like to interrupt conversations, but let's go ahead and get ready. I hope everybody had a chance to meet some of the people here, or maybe just hang out with the folks they came with. Maybe get a refreshed drink. I'm very excited to get the second half going. I know we've got a lot of great readers coming up here. I have heard or known each of them for various amounts of time. We've got a video performance out of Dallas, or near Dallas, I should say, from my good friend Jalen. But first, I want to get started here with our second set with my new friend John Brockhouse. In ancient times, John Brockhouse wrote for and sometimes edited a now long deceased radical newspaper, the Northwest Passage. He had subsequent careers as a salmon fisherman, low-level Boeing manager, and K-8 teacher in the Rainier Valley. Tonight, he will read from his book in progress, The Price of an Indian. It is a collection of nonfiction short stories about historical incidents involving Washington State Native Americans and their nemesis, pioneers, Indian agents, the Army, and other white institutions. Please welcome John Brockhouse.
First, note of appreciation for Anne, who was supposed to read at this point and traded spots with me so my grandson could see me. Thank you, Anne. Okay, so I have two short stories, very short stories. As Ari said, they're nonfiction. They actually happened. They described historical incidents that took place on Hood Canal in the 1870s. Each highlights cultural differences between Indian and non-Indians at a time when natives were adjusting to having their land, their world taken over by whites, basically. Both took place in the town of Seaback, a tiny mill town of 400 residents then, and not a whole lot bigger now. They both contain dialogue in the Chinook jargon, both of these stories, a trading language of about 500 words. It was a common means of communication between Indians and non-Indians until the early 20th century.
Is there a way to pull the microphone up a little bit? I was just gonna say that. Yeah, it's a little hard.
Okay. So,
There you go.
all right. Testing 1, 2. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So, audience, Duolingo does not offer lessons in the Chinook jargon, but I do. Here's a short sentence which contains the most dramatic words in this story. Boston's the late Hyas Pilton. Oh, you didn't think it was that dramatic. Okay. So how about if I teach you those words, and then when I give you a signal at a certain moment in the story, you shout these words out, and then I'll tell you what they mean. Boston's the late Hyas Pilton. Boston's the late Hyas Pilton. Very good. Okay. So, the name of my story, which takes place in 1873 on July 4th, is Jack Clams retires from a 2-hour career as a bowling pin setter. Okay. Seaback whites called the eccentric Indian couple Jack Clams and Sally Smash Rocks. Jack's nickname was inspired by the couple's devotion to the consumption of clams, and Sally's came from her remarkably simple way of preparing them. Twice a day, the falling tide would uncover the local shellfish beds, and Sally would dig clams and then smash them against a rock. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner too. Beginning in late spring and continuing through the summer, they would add berries to the menu. Their dwelling was no more complex than their diet, for they lived in a tent on the beach. Jack and Sally, a Seaback historian later wrote, were, quote, totally void of ambition. They had no cares whatever. The monotony of the daily fare of Jack Clams and Sally Smash Rocks occasionally bothered these independent spirits, but adding variety to their diet came with a steep price. Eating the white man's food required working for him to pay for it. To resist white attempts to recruit them as hired labor, the Indian couple long stayed steadfast in their commitment to the clan. Jack and Sally could not remain forever separate from the white economy, however. The lure of Boston muckamuck, American food, was powerful. And the Indian pair occasionally faltered in their resolve. The couple developed a taste for flour and sugar, and they enjoyed fruit. Jack Clams began to take an occasional job to earn chickamen to finance their weakness for these foods. During one of these rare periods of employment, Jack was making 50 cents a day working in the kitchen of the Bayview Hotel owned by Seebeck resident Edward Clayson. One summer day, Clayson offered him a new job at $2 a day, a four-fold increase in Jack's pay. "Delayed Hayu chickaman, truly much money," he exclaimed, stunned at his sudden change in fortune. He quickly agreed to take the new job. Jack was to start work the next morning, the 4th of July, at a newly installed bowling alley in the hotel. He would reset bowling pins by hand. Jack righted his first fallen bowling pin the next morning at 10 a.m. He initially approached his new occupation with enthusiasm, quickly restoring toppled pins to their marks at the end of the lanes. Excuse me, I gotta take a little sip here. Marks at the end of the lane. As the balls continue to roll and pins to fall, however, Jack's attitude tumbled as well. His eagerness soon gave way to bewilderment and annoyance and anger. By the third game of the day, disgust dominated Jack's countenance. Every time he managed to arrange the 10 pins in a neat triangle, some big logger or mill hand would roll a heavy ball and knock them down again. By noon, he'd had his fill of this Sisyphean task. His job, Jack told Clayson as he walked away from his station, was the late cultist Mamuk, truly useless work. Now the phrase, Boston's delayed highest Pilton. What that means is white men are truly big fools. With the opening of his new bowling alley facing an abrupt end, Clayson tried threats to keep his pin setter on the job. "If you don't work, you get nothing to eat," he warned Jack Clams. Jack laughed scornfully. "If you don't work, you will get nothing to eat. Lots of clams and berries for me." The Indian walked out of the hotel, forsaking his chance at Hayu chickaman, a big money. He headed back to the beach, where clams were doubtlessly on the lunch menu, possibly with late ripening salmon berries. Jack Clams had restored his spiritual equilibrium. Seebeck had lost a pin setter, but had regained a philosopher. The other piece tonight is a story about a potlatch. A potlatch is a ceremony during which a wealthy tribal member gives away virtually all his or her possessions to fellow tribespeople and members of invited tribes. It's a Northwest Native tradition that is part feast, part dance, part casino, part welfare, part sporting event, part Christmas, and a full-on party. At the end of the potlatch, the host is significantly poorer, but higher in status, and the invited guests are all a bit wealthier. The title is An Insane Exuberance of Generosity, that's in quotes. Betsy and Old Sam host Hood Canal's greatest potlatch ever. The insane exuberance of generosity is a statement that really irritates me. It was made by a member of Canada's Parliament in the 1880s as he attempted to enact a law banning potlatches in all of Canada because the Indians were sharing capital rather than accumulating it. It was termed anti-Christian. An insane exuberance of generosity. It just, it always has flummoxed me. All right. It happened in 1878, also in Seebeck and Union City on Hood Canal. Betsy and old Sam Chametz were a frugal native couple. The two residents of the lumber town of Seebeck, members of the area's dominant Twana tribe, worked steadily yet never seemed to spend their earnings. They lived as paupers in the eyes of the white residents of their busy Upper Hood Canal mill town. The couple lived on the beach in tents or shanties. They wore hand-me-down Boston American clothes. Boston is American, and ate leftover food from the white people who paid Betsy to wash their clothes. Although a generation had passed since whites first moved into the Seebeck area, the couple continued to live in traditional Indian ways. Sam and Betsy sustained themselves by picking salmon berries, digging clams, and gathering driftwood for fuel. After the arrival of white people in the 1850s, however, they also did jobs for chickamen for money. So did their daughter Jenny, 14 years old in 1878, who had worked as a domestic since the age of 5. After years of working for white people, but living like Indians, Sam and Betsy ended the mystery of how they spent their pay. They had not spent their pay. The two had saved almost every penny paid them by the loggers, mill hands, and housewives of Seebeck. The hard-working Twana pair had accumulated $4,000, an extraordinary sum in 1878. The scale of their thrift can perhaps be shown by an advertisement in a Seattle newspaper that year. The ad listed a partially improved 40-acre parcel on Lake Union, maybe it turned into Amazonia by now, in Puget Sound's future metropolis for $600. Sam and Betsy could have paid for it 6 times over, but to natives such as this Twana couple, the very concept of individual ownership seemed absurd. They measured wealth not by what they could accumulate, but by what they could give away. The couple accordingly chose to act in the traditional way of the well-to-do native. They would hold a fabulous potlatch and give away the fortune they had built day by day, a nickel at a time. In mid-October of 1878, Indian canoes brought the happy news that Betsy and Sam's potlatch to invited natives around the Olympic Peninsula and Vancouver Island. The Twana pair decided to hold their event at a site near Union City on the Lower Hood Canal. Soon, friends and family launched canoes in the Quinault River, on Vancouver Island, from the beaches of Port Townsend and the shores of the Strait of Juan de Fuca. Potlatch guests came from as far away as 150 miles, and that's quite a paddle, folks. Their 8-day party, a contemporary historian declared, may well rank as the greatest potlatch ever held in the Puget Sound area. The revelers feasted, sang, and danced. Shaman performed feats of magic. Guests gambled relentlessly. The hosts bestowed gift after gift upon their guests. Swinomish paddled off with blankets. Vancouver Island natives left with calico. Twana from the Skokomish River carried home guns and baskets. In addition to feeding hundreds of guests for days, Betsy and Sam gave away $2,000 in gold and silver coins. When the last of the visiting canoes had shoved off for home at the end of the potlatch, the wealth from years of toil for the white man had gone as well. Sam, Betsy, and Jenny returned to Seebeck. They again lived in their shack on the beach. Betsy took in washing. Jenny hired out as a domestic. They gathered berries and dug clams. For fuel, they burned driftwood. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. I'm so happy too that your grandson could stick around for that. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Okay. I do want to bring up a poet now. This is going to be Sarah Ramos Amador. Moving around as a kid, plus being bicultural in the 80s, created a void of belonging. She turned to writing and arts to create a home. She studied visual art and creative writing at UW-Madison and Evergreen State College. Her master's is in clinical mental health with a specialization in drama therapy, and she uses creative forms to heal trauma. Please welcome Sarah Ramos Amador.
Hi, thank you for being here. I'm really grateful for this space and the inclusivity of collections. These are poems that there's different times in my life I've written, so it's kind of a different, it's kind of like a whale coming up to, breathe and then goes back down. So there's just different developmental stages in my life. Okay, so this is a poem called Between. No one between my one, no lip between lips, no waist between hips, no second body laid between my beds made, no sister's hands cutting a straight part between braids, no man's back breaking between rest for me to stuff his money between my breasts. No infant cries born between my thighs. I am the one between, on the corner between streets, on the shift between bus lifts, paycheck between paycheck, my hand between my neck. I am the one between my one. I choke between cries. I backslide between tries, a comma between collisions, a blackout between visions, a fear between love. I am the one snake between my two doves. Yeah. This one's called Homecoming. I get filled with energy up here, so very exciting. Okay. Homecoming, a homecoming. Preparation is emancipation. As I thread my needle, a bullet flies. A war has begun from eye of string to mouth of gun. This heat not indebted to the sun, sphere rifted, remains sifted. I am the diamond among grains, the seed no longer barren. I return to the desert to blossom. I am the cactus flower pushing petal against spear. This one's called Clearing. Okay, clearing. Pre-dawn, body full of life flutters. She climbs from the bed hole. Fear swoops in like an owl, tears her from sunrise, drops her in a dark river. The mother in her wades in the cold current, pulls the child in her onto the mossy shore. Her two selves climb into the woods, holding hands, pulling each other through open space, framed by branches and barbed wire. A benediction has begun. A new place forms in the ruins. Around the corner, gathered in a field, a circle of people guard a clearing for her electric birth. I had two more. And these are, I didn't time myself, but this is not 10 now. Okay, I have two more. Okay. And I'm kind of doing what Al did. I'm not telling you what they're about. You can figure it out. Or make a story out of what you hear. Motherfall. My boy falls from the lily's white horn, between the bee and the stone, slowly into the ground. I could not catch him. His red, roaring face presses out. Tear after tear, sadness overflows onto the plates of others, mixes into the hot, churning air. A tiger steps from the edge of the forest. I close midday like a squash flower. What has awakened? Who has lifted its head? Where do I put this darkness? The mentally ill man who has killed 5, the raccoon carcass across the road, the broken glass at my baby's feet. Am I enough? Will there always be corn to grind? Where are the yellow birds, the signs, the miracles, the space between Gandhi's palms? Fingertip to fingertip, a prayer forms, a ribbon unravels, insects unfold, a rose curls in the dry river bed. As a hummingbird hovers over my sleeping son, I set out to roam through the spring gold and fireweeds, hungry for a mother, for an ancient answer. Over the velvet mounds, I find her, a tree filled with birds, a cacophony of singing and wrestling in her leaves. Fruit offerings fall, a pile of golden plums at my bare feet. I carry my harvest home in my skirt and in a song. Baby sounds for mama and mama sounds for baby. Our voices embrace in the pink air. Thank you. As the last one, it's called Separation. There's a lot of separation. It's part of development, letting go of something, like shedding a skin. And my dad came in and out of my life many times. So separation was always, really scary. So now it's like, this is kind of my relationship with it. I have 2 sons right now. One is 15 and 18. So that is also part of my daily life. So separation. Separation awakens me. Death, deportation, when eyes don't meet mine. A match strikes in my sky. An ofrenda ignites. I seep in the heat, my cells howl. How do I live in a world of leaving, on the land where the plum must fall? It begins with you, Papa. The first time you surrendered to the pull of the night, you slipped the hook out my mouth when the light behind my eyes could not reach you. My heart still tied to your back with strings, you disappear over the mountains, stealing half my world. I become an abandoned child, a girl left like a soft peach. I try to find you, Papa. Rummage through your clothes, lift my palms toward your empty chair, but you do not appear and your vacancy cannot hold me. You introduced me to separation, cut me from the whole, an early severing. I drift in a void, my mother's song silence. I collect her tears in a jar, swallow them to make them disappear. Outside I wait, eyes open for your reflection. Does my face pierce your dream? Does the girl in line remind you of me, Papa? Why doesn't my existence bring you home? I lower a lantern to raise a shield, my scope focused on exit signs. A stranger's turning head, a taking hand, a shedding eye. I pry open others' fists to reclaim what I lost. They reveal palms, empty palms. I dream for a layer of hands on my skin to keep my inner parts from falling in. And as I go out into the world, I hear my son cry. His red face in the window opens my little girl eyes wide. She is still in me, drifting in the void, weaving braids with her insides. Weaving braids with her insides to stop the leaving. With each fiber she whispers, stay, stay, stay. Today I choose her, move toward her chaos. Lay my hands on her making, pull her to my chest, and the peacock folds his tail. With her, I move slow and strong. I move like a viejita without her walker. I move across the space like a spider repairing her web. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Even before you mentioned that peach, I was already thinking listening to your poetry is kind of like eating really delicious fresh fruit. So I appreciate you coming up here and sharing that with us. I just want to mention briefly that this whole format is inspired by my experience at a little place called Goddard College that no longer exists. And the remaining readers, including myself, have experienced that place for what it was. And what we would do is after our coursework, it was a low residency thing. We'd be there for a week at a time, twice a year. And after we finish our forums or whatever we were doing all day, we would meet in the living quarters at night and gather around and read aloud what we've been working on to one another. And really, I think that there's a lot of power in this format of being able to just be able to share out loud. And even if we can hear each other, we can also hear ourselves. And that's kind of what I think is the real power of this salon format. I do want to now bring up my new friend, Anne Hedreen. Anne Hedreen's memoir, Her Beautiful Brain, won a 2016 Next Generation Indie Book Award. Anne has also written for About Place Journal, the Museum of Americana, and many other publications, including her longtime blog, The Restless Nest. She teaches memoir writing at Seattle Central College, Hugo House, and elsewhere, and is currently putting the finishing touches on a novel. Anne earned her MFA in creative writing at Goddard College and her BA at Wellesley College. A Seattle native, she lives and works with her husband, author, and filmmaker Rustin Thompson in Columbia City. Please welcome Anne Hedreen.
Thanks, Ariel. It's just a real pleasure to be here, and I appreciate you all sticking around for the final reader, which is me, right? This is the prologue to my novel, currently titled Eva.
It is based on the true story of a 14-year-old girl who was kidnapped by her 34-year-old brother-in-law in 1926. But again, this is the prologue, so those things haven't happened yet. Her mind had become a window on a train. She lived only there. She was 97 years old. No, 7. Yes, that was the right number, 7. Her socks wouldn't stay up. Her shoes hurt. She had a place to sit, one half of a seat in her family's compartment, but she preferred to stand, nose to the window, everyone out of sight behind her. Father, married sister and her husband just home from the war, teenage sister who pretended to be bored, and little brother who fidgeted and occasionally kicked her bare shins, though she would not grant him even a glance. If she did not move her head, she could not see their faces, which was important because she had to stay in her mind where there was only motion, only rushing through the long hours of wheat country and the low hills of Indian country. And then as night fell, the train began its stately climb through the mountain passes, hugging slopes so steep the branches of the pines brushed the window, and over the rattle of the pistons she could just make out an owl's gentle coaxing. Sleep, little girl, sleep. Soon you'll be in Seattle. Soon. First you must sleep. At last she turned from the window, curled into her father's lap, and slept. In her dreams, her dead mother whispered in Danish and caressed her moon-pale hair, while the pine needles caressed her hand, until the whispering needles turned into Famo's hand, and her mother's murmur became Famo's voice. Eva, time to wake up. Eva, you have a visitor. She did not want a visitor. If she kept her face to the window, eyes closed, she would not see the visitor or Famo, even though Famo was her favorite of all the aides, or this stale nursing home room. If she kept her face to the window, she would see green stalks of spring wheat landing full backbends in the wind. She would see the Blackfeet teepees clustered near the creek beds. She would see the steep forested slopes give way to alpine basins scattered with balsam root and paintbrush and lupin and snow patches, and then the glaciers so bright they made your eyes hurt. She would slip off these blankets and walk, not bent, but tall and strong, into the dazzle of the ice, which was not cold but warm, because in it was her mother's caressing hand. Eva, your granddaughter Laura is here. She would love to see you. Granddaughter, what an absurd thought. It was she who was a child, a motherless girl child, whose life was now a window on a train that was not taking her from one place to another, from one life chapter to another. No, this train was like a fly fisherman casting on the Milk River, flinging her upward into the glaciers, into the sun itself, into a universe that lay over the only 2 horizons she had ever known. 1, the distant mountains, and 2, the before and after of her mother, who left forever on that other train, eastbound, packed like a set of china plates in a long box. Eva's oldest sister, Rachel, had traveled with their mother on that trip, not next to the long box, but in the passenger car. Rachel wore a new black bonnet that made her look like an old lady on her way to church. Eva's second sister, Alice, ordered Eva, who was then not yet 4 years old, to stay in the wagon while she waved Rachel off at the station in Chinook, her own hat crumpled in her fist. Eva's third sister, Lillian, who was 12, sat still as a statue in the buckboard, her fierce eyes focused straight ahead, her arms clamped tight around their baby brother, Henry. Their father was far away, waiting for this train in Bowbells, North Dakota. Their papa had been called back to Bowbells to bury his brother when the news came that his wife had died suddenly, an infection of the heart. He knew she would wish to be buried there too, next to their son, William. Days later, Father and Rachel came back without Mother, as Alice had warned Eva they would. They came back and took off their mourning clothes and went right to work. It was planting season, not a minute to waste. The Farmer's Almanac was promising a good year for Montana highline wheat, and there was a war on in Europe, and the mills in Minneapolis were sending barrels of flour to England as fast as they could grind the grain. Eva was too young for work. Lillian was in the kitchen from dawn to dusk, cooking for her father, and big sisters, and a rotating cast of bachelors, new arrivals from Norway and Denmark and Germany, who had shown up too late to turn the sod this season on their own claims. Lillian told Eva her job was to take Henry outside and play. Stay away from snakes, Eva, and don't you let him wander into the pond. Eva and Henry, who had only just started to walk, scraped dirt into mounds and drew pictures with sticks and tried to capture the little blue butterflies. Eva hummed the tunes she had heard her sisters humming. She'll be coming round the mountain when she comes, when she comes. And Henry tried to copy her. Evenings were the best time. Her father and sisters came into the yard and splashed themselves from the bucket. The bachelors took sandwiches from the table and waved goodnight as they headed out onto the road. Inside, the family ate their own sandwiches and drank glasses of milk, and then Eva and Henry were tucked into bed by one of the sisters. But in summer, it was still far too light out to sleep. So Eva sat up, arms on the windowsill, and watched for the stars while her sisters washed dishes and her father smoked his pipe. Sometimes their neighbor, Ronald, a German bachelor, came over to talk to father and steal glances at Rachel. Sometimes Ronald asked if he could play his fiddle, to which father always replied, "Yes, please," and Ronald would play Lavender's Blue and Sweet Betsy and Skip to Maloo. Lost my partner, what'll I do? As the lanterns came on, tiny fireflies dotting the prairie, father and Ronald would point to them and say, "Oh, look, there's a new one out on the Sage Road." Or, "Looks like old Pedersen must be sitting up late." After the sisters finished their chores, they would carry chairs out from the house and join the men. "Ronald, can you play that pretty old Scottish tune?" Lillian asked one night. "My Bonnie?" "Sure I can," he answered, and his fiddle began to sing. The girls joined in. "My Bonnie lies over the ocean, my Bonnie lies over the sea." First quietly, then louder and stronger, and then in rounds which made them collapse in laughter. It took them a minute to hear another voice, a rich tenor, rolling up from the road. "Oh, blow you winds over the ocean, oh, blow you winds over the sea." In the half dark, they couldn't see who it was until, still singing, he stepped into the lantern light. "Why, it's Tom. Oh, Tom, you startled us." More laughter. Tom, the newest bachelor, who'd only just shown up asking for work that very day. Tom, straight from the north of England, who'd had a letter from a friend telling him to come to Chinook, Montana, but by the time he got here, his friend was gone. "Good evening, ladies. Mr. Larson, Ronald, Miss Eva," Tom said, waving to Eva at the window. "I'm here to confess I have nowhere to sleep. Might I bed down in your barn?" Rachel laughed. "Oh, Tom, you're so formal. Of course you can. Alice will get you a blanket. But first you must sing with us." "You remembered my name," Eva murmured to Henry, who was sound asleep. "The other bachelors just call me little girl or little sister, but Tom already knows my name." This next bit is called Laura. Grandma Eva's spare bedroom was the safest, warmest place in the world. Laura loved to sink her toes into the carpet as she and her sister padded in after brushing their teeth. The pleasure of having such deep silence underfoot, then the thrill of climbing up and into the envelope of crisp white sheets turned back and waiting for her, as if she were a letter being sent off to the land of dreams. And there were pillows, real pillows. They didn't have pillows at home. And the sounds, the grandfather clock ticking gently on the landing, the murmur of grown-ups downstairs, glasses faintly clinking, bursts of laughter like sudden drum rolls, the smell of cigarettes, the sound of Grandma Eva's swishing satin dress as she crept in to kiss the girls goodnight, the intoxicating shiver of her Shalimar scent, her hand smoothing Laura's forehead, patting down her cowlick one last time before she closed her eyes. Grandma Eva didn't sing lullabies, but her voice was as soothing as any song. "Good night, my dears. Sleep tight. Sweet dreams." Grandma Eva was a beacon. She was a haven. She was a room full of books and velvet. She was a mystery, but Laura didn't know that. Not yet. Thank you.
so much for that, Anne. That was really fun to follow. It's interesting. The first half we kind of had people disguising themselves in some New York themes, and now we seem to have more of a nature and maybe Indian country theme in the second half. I always like to try to track these little themes that come up. I do have a nightcap for you all now. My creepy friend just outside of Dallas is waiting in the screen behind me. It's going to be Jalen Renee Fisk. Jalen Renee Fisk is a science fiction, fantasy, and horror author, and the fiction editor for James Gunn's Ad Astra magazine. She often explores themes of transformation and identity in her writing, and loves all things unsettling and strange. Her debut short story collection, Side Quest Stories, was released in 2024 and won gold in the Reader Views Literary Award. There are some of her bookmarks, in fact, back by the back door. If you enjoy her writing, there's a little section there. You can check that out. You can also find her website by following our QR code and going to the collection's webpage. Please now welcome on video, Jalen Renee Fisk.
I'm Jalen Renee Fisk, and I have a dark fantasy horror type of story for you tonight in the holiday dark winter spirit. So this one is called The Willow Race. I study the four figures poised tall and slender in a semicircle, draped in hooded robes that used to be white. Time has tattered them, the figures and the robes. They have stood there, shadow-faced and quiet, in the immaculate woods beneath the deep night and the simmering sun, for as long as I can remember, as long as my mother can remember, and her mother before that. They aren't statues, my sister Gianna says, made of copper or wood. It's true, my brother William says. Cut them with a knife and they bleed. He shows me a dark speckled stain on the hem of one of the robes. It used to be bright red. I don't remember this myself, but I believe what I'm told. Mother tells us to hush and leave them alone. The willow wraiths are sleeping. When will they wake? I ask. This is the first night I can see them up close, the first night I am deemed old enough and ready to accompany my family on the undertaking tasked with Amsterdam generations ago. I raise my eyes to look in their faces, but the moonlight shrouds their features. No one answers my question. And we, my sister, my brother, my mother, and me, continue our walk through the woods, looking for signs of intruders in the sanctuary of the willow wraith. Cloven footprints, scorched leaves, dead and darkened earth. The intruders taint all they touch. They must never reach our sleeping protectors. Baneful, my mother calls them. Long ago, the wraith protected the Manserkind, and now we must protect them. We fortify the Lucius walls surrounding our wooded refuge by hanging pouches of wood chips filled with Coca-Cola. We carve protection seals into the ancient bark of weeping willows, murmuring oaks, and whispering redwoods. William touches each item, each seal, and casts an enchantment of repel that causes outsiders to flee. Even so, once every fortnight, a baneful manages to get through the ward. We walk and search for signs, but we also check the traps. I hear whimpering, and I know a baneful is caught in a trap William set with his second skill of lure. He likes to keep them alive. I don't know why. They don't speak our language, and we don't speak theirs. William smiles at the sight of the large wolfish creature limp upon the ground. Obsidian spikes pierce its beastly hide. Some have staked it all the way through. Its blood is storm cloud gray, the same color as its eye. I want to reach out my hand to touch the creature. There is a question on my lips, a question I've wondered many times before. Mother, what is the baneful? But it's walked away. Mother turns to Gianna. Kill it quickly, but do not touch. My sister steps toward the dying baneful, hovers her hand above its blood-streaked face, and closes her eyes to concentrate. Gianna has the magic of harmony and grace. She can make things peaceful and rhythmic, but she can also send them into disarray. In a few moments, the creature's breathing falls out of sync and its heart falters, then ceases to beat, the slow, deep tone drumming of their kind. Weak from the breakings, Yana stumbles away from the stilled corpse of the intruder. Mother draws her close and pulls her back into the fold, back into the safety of her arms. Well done, she said. Now it's her turn. And Mother hums a tune with the power of disappear. She can make all kinds of things vanish. Sometimes when I wake from one of my nightmares, she sings softly in my ear, and the shadows and monsters are whisked away. But she can sing other songs too, ones that create. The tune she hums now crumbles the corpse into ash and carries the feathery powder off on the wind and over the wall into whatever lies beyond. The area where the veins of blood seep through is black and hollow. Nothing will grow there again, unless the one with the magic of cleanse can wash the poison from the soil and the seed. All look to me. I am the third child, the one who can return things to the way they once were. But when I close my eyes and look inside myself, there is a creeping darkness that frightens me. You must try, Cora, Mother says. I summon my skill, but the earth remains black and hollow. Try, Mother repeats. There is a sharpness to her voice that makes me flinch. For an instant, I think I see star-shaped leaves of green clover where the poisoned foliage had been. I blink, and the earth is black once again. I'm sorry, I whisper. A sharp sting comes to my side, and I gasp for breath. Mother frowns. She looks around the garden, searching. What's wrong, William asks. Nothing, Mother says. Time to go. Perhaps tomorrow, Fiona says to me as she helps me up. But I don't think so. Tomorrow is the same as today, as yesterday, and all the days that came before. Thank you. Have a great New Year.
I just found out by from Jalen's newsletter that I subscribe to that she is turning my favorite short story of hers into a novella, or the world that it's set in into a novella. The short story is called Verity's Fairy Teas. And Jalen, if you're watching, I just want to say thank you for doing that, because I'm looking forward to reading that. On the screen behind me now, you can see our lineup for next month. We're going to have Carolyn R. Hall, Laura Schaefer, Kevin Dean, Jason M. Thornberry, Andrea Karen Nelson, Aubrey Travez, and a couple of video readings from Horde Explorer. And Rose Concannon is actually Carolyn's novel that she wrote a while back. And we're going to be showing this beautiful animation that was the preview to that. So I hope you all can make it for that. I will leave you tonight with a very short poem. The poem is called Who Is She? She, gently holding a snake, leads it to a bowl of mice in a house full of hallways, a hallway full of heads, a pig with an attitude, an alligator with a foot in its eye. That was when Jesus said, "Check, please." I knew him by the hole in his hand. An angel above me, I'd like to see her when I die again, to be surrounded by an orchestra of muses. Maybe I'll slaughter a lamb in her name. 30,000 tiny heads, and only one is looking at me. She's the one I want to remember. I want to thank all of our readers tonight. I want to thank Jason again, and I want to thank the Hugo House. I just want to thank all of you for being here. I think I said all the readers, but I'll thank them again, just in case. And I hope to see you all next month. Thanks for coming to Collections.
I know, like,
Yes, we finished the whole. You gotta put the reason. It was a work in progress.
Thank you. So wonderful. That was fantastic. I was there. I don't think so. Setting the class and I got it. Yes. We're gonna take coffee. Yes, and it was great. And it was very good. Like finished the coffee and then so I was like, they invited me. I was like, I need it ready.
Love story.
Yeah.
Yes. I walked in. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I understand. Appreciate yeah. So there's potential to see into your credit. Thanks so much. Yeah. It's true, but it's trying to have exercise moderation. Try it. Just check out our website. You can check out my RUSTIN. RUSTIN. Oh, that would have thrown me out. Yeah. Let's say I don't have
No, they're handy.
Just for the sake of giving a card. Yeah.
Oh, good.
I do mostly So if you notice, my life might diverse. Yeah, I was a little too young. Yes. Naive to understand what's going on, but I was making my older brother and my other family. And they were kind of celebrating when the players were yeah.